Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Paula with Paula's Imperfect Plans. On my channel, I share my personal budgeting and planning journey as a wife, a mother, a farmer, and a professional in a nonprofit, focusing on the tools that I utilize to help me be efficient and effective in all those areas of my life. So as advertised, this is going to be my debt confession video. So I have been so inspired watching other people's debt confessions and their videos and following their journeys that I've been inspired to make my own debt confession video. Full disclosure, this is going to look different likely than other debt confession videos that you have seen, and the main reason for that is that most of, hopefully, my debt paying journey is behind me. I started my paying off debt journey long before my YouTube journey, or both long before I knew that this YouTube community even existed. And it actually probably would have been helpful and supportive to me in my journey, but alas, that is how things go sometimes. So, these videos and watching people's other creators debt confessions and their debt progress videos has been so inspiring to me, and really has gotten me reflecting and having more conversations with my husband about how far we have come and the progress that we've made, and those feelings, like going back to that pit in your stomach feeling of like, how did we get here? How am I going to pay for this? Like, I don't make enough money to pay my bills and be able to make headway on my debt and that kind of thing. So while this is a debt confession journey video, it's also going to be some kind of a debt journey video about kind of where we started, a little bit of a timeline of where we've been to where we are now, as well as where we are going, hopefully, in our future. So I've started, let's just do this a little bit differently. I don't know the best way to do this. Okay, so I started back to 2016. That is the year that we got married. So while that's not necessarily the beginning of the debt journey, I think it's probably the best place for us to start. So we had, in 2015, no, we didn't get married in 2016, but we did get married in November of 2015. So that was late in the year. So we got married in 2015. He sold his house. We moved back to my hometown. We, used the profits from selling his house to buy new appliances and new furniture for our house currently, as well as obviously pay off the mortgage that he had on it. So then we got married in late 2015, and I got pregnant. Well, I guess I found out I was pregnant right after New Year's of 2016. So that's moving into 2016. So he had some student loans left, not a lot. I looked back into some different accounts to see if I could get better numbers, but a lot of these are estimates because of the time that has lapsed and the fact that I really haven't documented a lot of this journey. So he did have approximately, that's my guess, of $5,000 left in student loans. I had about $30,000 in student loans from two different stints in college. I owed about $3,600 on a car. I owed that to my parents. This was actually late 2015. We went and bought my husband a truck. That was kind of our first big purchase together as a married couple, is how I'm going to say that. We did this in late 2015. It was a 2014 truck. We were so proud to be able to do that and feel like we could do that. That was I don't remember the specific dollar amount for that loan, like the payment amount, but I wrote the check for $600 a month. So that was overwhelming. And in 2016, we signed, we called it our mortgage. I had a mortgage, which was actually a contract for deed way that we purchased our house from my parents. Started in, I think, April of 2016. At some point in either late 2015 or early 2016, I remember opting to buy a wedding band after originally not planning to, and then being talked into it by a family member. I think that was around $2,000, so that would have been on a card. I don't have all the details, but that's my best guess. And then my husband upgraded toolboxes, and again, it's a guess. traded an old one in and bought a new one. At the point in time when he did that, I think it was still in late 2015 when he did that, he needed to provide tools in a toolbox for his job. He's a mechanic by trade. And so was it a need? No. And I know that, and I remember having that conversation, but it is what it was. So it was probably about $6,000 that we owed just right to the dealer for that toolbox. So that was as of 2016, that was our current debt picture, or at least a good estimate of it. We have never had, so the total on that for that year is $136,600. I'm just going to note that there. We've never had a significant amount of money on credit cards, except for one that you're going to see $1,000 here or there. It's always, gotten paid off then at tax time or whatever. Definitely a problem area for me is credit cards, but it's never been anything debilitating or unmanageable, I guess is how I'm going to say that. So I'm sure that there were, big purchase, $400 or $500 for a laptop here or there that I'd go and buy and then pay off a little bit later. Nothing, and not that that's good. I'm not saying that it's good, but it's definitely was not unmanageable. It wasn't multiple thousands of dollars. It wasn't, all the interest types of things. I know in 2015, we put furniture on a credit card with no interest and paid it off. And I know several different times we've made larger like Menards purchases for home improvement things on their 6-month no interest plan and then paid it off in that 6 months. So, those have been kind of revolving things, and I just have no way to track those is where we're at. So late 2016, my first child was born. So then moving into 2017, there was a good guess of his student loans. He paid, I think it was graduated, so he paid it, the minimum payment that came out when he graduated from college with an associate's degree, and he just paid the monthly payment that he was supposed to on time every month for 10 years. But it was, it started off a little bit smaller, and then as the years went by, it did get a little bit bigger. But I think the most it ever was, it was under $200, his student loan payment. So it was never extreme. So I'm just guessing what it would have been a year later. So my student loans, I just guess they were at $29,000. I have been working in a nonprofit setting for all but 2 years, I think, of my life since graduating with my associate's degree. And so I have been under and qualified for the Public Service Student Loan Forgiveness Program. For those of you familiar with it, not familiar with it, whatever, I've been on an income-driven repayment plan since I graduated with my bachelor's, which was actually in 2014. And then my income, the income-based repayment was lower until we got married in 2015, and then it was a little bit higher. Obviously, they're counting his income as well. But still, making that income-based repayment, so not touching a whole lot other than the interest. But for those of you familiar with that program, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So probably about $29,000 in student loans. I'm guessing that we would, in a year later, would have been around halfway done with that toolbox. So after having my first child, this tiny little car with the car seat that could barely fit I loved that car, but his little infant car seat could hardly fit in the back seat, and I couldn't even put a stroller in the trunk. So off I go to get an SUV. This is an estimate of that SUV. I made my last car payment to my parents, the paycheck after I traded it in on this SUV. So I went no time without a vehicle payment. But I didn't, so my last payment to them at the last paycheck would have been $150. So I traded that in owing nothing but $150 on this car. Anyway, so went and got an SUV, brought that up to $15,000. I'm guessing that maybe we had paid $5,000 off on his truck. Again, that's a pretty big guess. I have no idea. Like I said, we did round up the minimum payment from whatever it was up to $600. And our mortgage, we paid about $6,000 a year on our mortgage. So guessing that to be down around $49,000. And so we've purchased this house. It's an acreage, purchased it from my parents. It was where my grandparents lived when I was growing up. My parents bought it from my grandpa when he needed money to be in the nursing home, so my parents owned it. Just a small prefab home that my grandparents put up when they retired up to the corner when my parents bought the farm from them when they got married, and there was nothing but a house on the property. And so while garages certainly aren't required, so it is worth noting that in 2016, my husband, who had always had to provide a toolbox and tools for his job, switched to a job where tools were provided. So he had, you know, a toolbox worth 20 grand and all the tools going in it and no place to put it. So we played around with, so you can see we don't owe a lot on our mortgage. So we played around with the equity in our home and we took out a home equity line of credit, our HELOC loan. The original amount was $41,000 to build a garage. And so that is what we did in 2017. It's also worth noting, I know I said this was the first big purchase we made as a married couple, but my name was not on that loan. It took quite a while for my credit to improve after we resolved the things related to the previous relationship. So while I did bring some income to the table, I also brought $30,000 worth of student loan debt and some previous, credit dings for things. So my name was not on that truck. So but to add to be able to take out this mortgage, we needed both of our income. Like that had to be there. So that was our first debt. We still didn't have any joint finances, but we went and we got this garage loan together. And so that is our line of credit. That is our HELOC. And you still will see this reference today. In my current debt, as the debt goes on, that doesn't really go away, and I will explain as we go. Well, anyway, the purpose of that originally was to build our garage, which we did. We built a garage. It looks actually like a shed or a shop. I call it my garage. My only contingency was that I could put my vehicle in it. Like I said, my husband was a mechanic. It took us a long time to get to that point, but there's a hoist in there, and he does some side work. Or can do some side work along with all the work on our vehicles, so it is very much his shop. But I said that I'm spending all this money to put up a garage, I will get one stall where I can put my vehicle in every night. And so far in all of these years, other than when we've used it to like set up for a kid's birthday party the next day, and so I've parked outside because we had tables and chairs set up, which to me is acceptable, that's happened. I've had my garage stall every day for 6 years now. So that is what 2017 looks like. Okay, I have this math amount is $171,000. And again, I know it didn't take me a long time to pay off that wedding band. I made minimum payments and probably paid it off with what would have been an okay first. Like that would have been our spring of 2017 would have been our first year claiming a kiddo on taxes. So certain that got paid off with that. So then moving down to 2018, I'm assuming around this time he had about $3,000 left on student loans. Again, I'm guessing we're paying like $180 a month. Not a big deal. We're making the minimum payments, whatever. We would have paid that toolbox off with the 2018 tax returns. So again, I'm guessing that maybe around $28,000 of my student loans as I'm making a minimum payment that's income driven, so not making much progress at all on the loan. So in summer of 2018, I found out I was pregnant with my second child. And just because of my SUV and all of the things, I had always planned for 3 kids, so I thought we're pregnant with kiddo number 2 because of whatever, probably a good time to invest in a van. And we found a deal on one. So I actually got less debt, I think, because, well, vans are just not as nice as a nice SUV, so I had to roll over some of the loan on that SUV because I was probably upside down in it. But it owed about $12,000 on a van. So then that debt is there. So in 2018, around February, so it would have been actually before I bought my van, we got real tired of that debt and that large payment. And so he traded his truck. And I'm sure you know how dealerships love to trade a nice truck for like downgrade. Like we downgraded way. Like this was a 14 Chevy Silverado, and we traded for like a 2003 F250, so it was like a bigger it wasn't a half ton, it was a 3/4 ton, and it could do more things, but it definitely was older, needed a lot of work. And we went down to, from owing $30,000 on that truck to about $12,000 on that truck. About $43,000 on the mortgage is my estimate, still owing about $41,000 on the HELOC. And in order to get this truck to where it needed to be, we put $5,000 of vehicle repairs on a credit card. Not my brightest moment, I can tell you that. And then, in addition to this, right, then, so if I can afford another $200 payment somewhere in my budget, then we can afford this thing. So we went and bought a Polaris Ranger for about $7,000. The payment was right around $235. It's like, I think I can pay that. Like, no money left over after I'm paying all my debts and our bills. But I could afford that Ranger for $7,000. Toolbox got paid off at that point in time. So that's about what 2018 looked like. All right, so that looks like about 151,000. So not only did we get out from under that truck debt at that point, we also went from like a $600 payment to, I think this one was like $369 for his truck, and my van payment was $286. So that's where that's at. It is worth noting, I don't know, so you know, like, so obviously, like, that's a bad decision. The truck repair on a credit card, it felt like a better idea than what we were doing here. But I think the reality of where we were at was, like, we knew we'd get with one kid, you know, about what we'd get with a tax return. And so while it wasn't a great idea, things like that always got paid off with tax returns the next year. So, like, debt on credit cards would always get cleared at tax time. All right, so in 2019, we paid off my husband's student loans 10 years after graduating, so not early or anything like that. About $27,000 I'm still owing on my student loans at that time. I had my van probably paid down to around 10 grand. Truck was maybe around 8, just continuing to make minimum payments on both of those vehicles. Our mortgage, I'm estimating, was around 37. Our HELOC is still at 41,000. So the deal with a line of credit for your home equity loan is it's not fixed. It's similar to, like, that was our max amount. So every time, you know, of course the garage cost more than we thought it was going to cost. So we put the garage up, we paid some down on the line of credit, and then we spent money paying someone to come and insulate it. And then we paid down a little bit more, and then we spent money paying someone to come and put the heating and, you know, the plumbing and heating in. And so just that kind of thing. Like, it continued to be for that garage mainly at this point, but then we did get into some home equity projects that, you know, we pay on it and then we would do some more projects. It's kind of what that has been utilized for. So then I'm estimating about this time we had about $4,200 on that Polaris Ranger loan. We had paid off the truck repair credit card. I'm assuming tax refunds that year. So I know we didn't carry that for long, and I paid it off as soon as I had the cash to do so. Yeah. Whoops. So that's looking like 127,200. We need to go back and explain some things about life. So my second child was born in February of 2019. I struggled very much with postpartum anxiety, although I did not know it was postpartum anxiety. I have struggled with anxiety my entire life, and I knew what that felt like, and I had managed it fairly well up until that point. Adding the second child in and that stress, she was born in that cold winter of 2019 when my husband was working overtime the majority of the time. We were snowed in the majority of my maternity leave, and I had a 2.5-year-old at that point in time who was really struggling with sensory issues. So that was a very, very difficult time from February to May. I went back to work in May. Still was struggling with postpartum anxiety, not knowing it was postpartum anxiety. It was really just extreme irritability and rage that I just thought I was losing my mind and hated everyone, including my husband. So struggled with that significantly. August 1st of 2019, my dad, who was like my favorite person on the planet, and my parents were very, very big supports to me. You know, I always really tried to do things myself, but would definitely be in a different position if I hadn't had the parents that I had. My dad, who was the most loving and fantastic papa ever to my 2.5-year-old and my 6-month-old daughter, died. Very, very, very unexpectedly. I just love talking about my dad. And I don't mind talking about the situation, but my phone rang at 12:40, and for some reason I heard it vibrate, which I don't typically hear my phone vibrate in the middle of the night. And it was my mom. And first of all, it said Papa and Mama with their last name, a shortened version of my maiden name. And like, okay, no, nobody from my parents' house phone is calling me at this time of morning unless it's bad, right? Those thoughts race through your head. And I will never forget, and I can't really describe it, couldn't try to replicate it, but the tone of her voice. I was like, ooh, it's bad. And she was just like, Paula, it's Dad. Get here now. And I remember asking, did you call an ambulance? Because I know what shock does. I know what trauma does. I know that you do silly things in those moments. I was like, oh, like, you know, did you call 911 or did you call me first? No, I called the ambulance. She lives a quarter of a mile down the road. And so after just like shoving my husband to let him know I was leaving and running out the door, I had to wait for my garage door to open so I could back my van out. But it's worth noting I can still sprint, that I got into the house in a pretty short amount of time. And anyway, so we lost my dad that night. And that was, I cannot tell you how impactful that was to someone who was already struggling, to a daddy's girl who now didn't have a dad, to someone who was already struggling with postpartum hormones and 2 little kids and then having to, and I'm just, you know, death is hard all the way around. Unexpected death is the only death of that magnitude that I have experience with. But man, it's a hard thing to figure out. And I am so thankful for my husband and for those babies, because if I didn't have those babies to get up every day for, I probably wouldn't have. So we lost my dad very unexpectedly, and that changed my entire worldview. And a month later, I got unexpectedly pregnant with my 3rd child. So going into, and then, okay, so I found out in October, my dad died August 1st. We had to put our puppy that we'd had, he's not a puppy, we had to put our dog that we'd had for 6 years down right around Labor Day, because he was like 13 and they found a mass on his spleen. He had been perfectly healthy up until one night. He was up all night and just, you could tell he was in pain, and we're like, something is wrong. And we found out what it was. I was like, he's 13 and he has had an entirely healthy life up until today. Like this, yep, this is, that was that was our decision that day. And then the next day my husband had surgery, and then a month later I found out in October, that all happened in September, and then I found out in October that I was very, very unexpectedly pregnant with, and people are always like, oh, you shouldn't say that. And I'm like, you know, I always wanted a 3rd kid, and I wanted the last 2 very close in age, closer than my first 2 were 2.5 years apart, and I wanted another 3rd one because I was not about having a bunch of kids in my 30s. It just came sooner than I anticipated it, but it just felt like such a sign from, and I'm not like here to like preach beliefs or anything, but it just felt like such a sign from my dad that like, hey, good things are still happening. You still get to be happy. Like, me being gone doesn't get to be the end of your life, because there are still great things coming. And that little girl saved my heart. Then let's even forget about things. So 5 days after we buried my dad, my mom, who was 2004 to 19, who was 15 years cancer-free, went up for a yearly mammogram and was diagnosed a 2nd time with breast cancer 5 days after burying her husband. That was in October of 2019. I knew I was pregnant and had not told anyone. So I was up there going through surgery, doing the things with her, trying to keep my life together. So I had a lot of time off, and after you go on maternity leave, I never really got a chance to build up my maternity leave. So I go into 2020 panicking because I have to take another maternity leave and I can't afford anything and I will not have time off saved. And I have 2 little kids, soon to be 3 little kids. I had 3 kids. My oldest was not 4 when my youngest was born. So I had 3 under 4 and just life was going to be nuts. And then the pandemic of 2020 hit. But before the pandemic of 2020 hit, I said, what in the actual heck are we doing? What is this? This is ridiculous. Why is all of my money going to a bank? Every time I get paid, I'm done with that. So I say that our official debt journey started in 2020, where I was like, I'm done with this. In reality, I know that I sold this Ranger in 2019 after my dad died, but it was before winter because she used it, I think, that fall. I'm pretty sure she used it that fall. My aunts have been trying to get her to get one of those side-by-sides forever, and my mom didn't think she needed one. Well, she bought it from us. Essentially, I told her like $4,500 because I just wanted enough to pay it off. I just wanted to quit making the loan payment. So it was a great deal for her, and it was a good deal for us, and I think she ended up giving me like $5,000 because she didn't think I was charging her enough. So she bought my Ranger, and I'm pretty sure it was still in 2019. So that was kind of my first step. Like, I'm done making these payments. So sold our Ranger. I'm still owing $27,000 in student loans. As you know, that once the forbearance came, like, I did quit making payments because I wanted to focus on my other debt. No interest would have been a great time to focus on my student loan debt, but I opted to focus on all of this other stuff instead. So the day, 2 days, no, that's silly. She was born on June 5th, so I think it was June 8th. So I had a van. It was a Dodge Grand Caravan. I don't like vans. Never been a van person. Here we are. When I went to, because we're like the queen and the king of the last minute. The day I was scheduled to be induced, which was June 4th, we were putting the car seat base in my van, and I realized, and at that point in time, again, I had a 3-year-old with sensory issues who could not buckle himself. So he's in a big old convertible car seat, forward facing in the back of that van. Because of that, how that had to sit in the back row, another car seat could not go in the back row, which means that the 2 girls, like the baby and my 1-year-old, would have to be in the buckets, which meant that for the last day of my before I had my daughter, I climbed my 9-month pregnant self in through the back entrance of my van to buckle my 3-year-old in. And I was like, oh boy, this is not cool. And I was very mad. And I know that it's not a van issue all the way around. It was a Dodge van issue, but I was very angry. And then I had to stay in the hospital an extra day with my daughter. So then my husband ended up leaving the hospital with me because this is in the middle of COVID and my kids couldn't come see me and they were sad, and he could come see me, but they were really struggling at 1 and 3 with the people that they were with. They missed their parents. I had been home for 12 weeks during the pandemic before I went into the hospital, so they were missing mom. So on that Monday, my husband went. He was tired of also climbing his self into the back to buckle my son. He went and traded my van for a Suburban. So it took me 3 kids and I finally got that push present. So my debt went from $8,000, and it was, or actually I think it was right about $8,000 when we traded it in. And I was going to, like, that was the next debt to focus on to pay off, was my van. Because I had was kind of loosely following Dave Ramsey. So then I ordered $20,000 on a Suburban that was older than my van. I went from a 2017 van to a 2013 Suburban. My van probably only had 50 or 60,000 miles, and my Suburban had like 120 or 113, I think, when I bought it. But I'm so glad that I bought it before the pandemic world of vehicles. We had about $3,500 on my husband's truck, $31,000 on the mortgage, and still $41,000 on the HELOC. I think between 2019 and 2020 we did siding and windows and some other things in the house. So it is worth noting. So in 2020, this is really when we were working on this. So we used tax refunds and all the stimulus payments to go toward the truck, and we paid that off in early 2020. And then after, so the tax refund and the first stimulus check went to the truck. There was money left over, so then I started focusing on my SUV. All the additional stimulus money went to that. And then I had a chunk, and I refinanced it with our local bank for a lot smaller payment and interest rate in October of 2020, and I refinanced $12,000. Like, so in October I owed $12,000 on that because of all the money I had thrown on it after the truck was paid off. Again, still owing. Yeah, so when my dad died in 2019, we bought an old cash camper. I hadn't camped. I'd never been into camping. My husband always wanted to. Cousins of mine that I got close to after my dad died did, and so we bought this old camper and just loved it. Camped all of 2019 and all of 2020. The end of 2020 with a 3rd kid, and just like this camper was not big enough. It didn't do the thing, so I had a plan. So we went and we borrowed in December of 2020. We sold this camper, the initial camper, for more than we paid for it because it was like the height of the camper stuff. Found a camper that we loved, like our dream camper. We're okay with it. We borrowed $17,000 in December of 2020. I took a personal loan from my mom to put down on that camper of $6,000 with the plan of cutting her a check when I got my tax refund in 2021. Again, so my journey goes like this. It's not like, hey, I'm only focused on paying stuff off. I definitely was still accumulating debt, obviously, up on the SUV, up on the things. So my journey has very much ebbed and flowed like people's do. I think that's normal. But my focus has never been like I need to be entirely debt free. I'm just looking to free up more of my money to be able to keep more of it for myself. So that puts us at max of that year at $145,500. So we paid the truck off in the spring of 2020, and then we started, we refinanced my Suburban in October. Going into 2021, it is worth noting that in the year of 2020, when my dad died, we did start farming and renting his ground from my mom. So that did change our tax situation quite a bit, which you'll see all this stuff is still paid off. The Suburban we owed $12,000 on in October of 20. We paid it off with taxes and the second stimulus or the final stimulus. I don't even remember now. Still owing $27,000 on my student loan because I'm not making payments on it. The mortgage was down to around $25,000. The HELOC loan was still at $41,000. And the camper, we continued basically making minimum payments. We would put extra on when we could, but honestly, we didn't have much extra. And the personal loan to my mom, we paid back with taxes in the spring of 2021. So at some point later in 2021, my husband's dad has a Harley-Davidson motorcycle that he wants to sell. My husband loved that bike. It lived with us on and off because my husband rode it a lot more than his dad did. They're preparing to move and downsize for retirement, and he wants to get rid of it. They agree on a price of this. For essentially, it's an older bike, but it has a brand new motor, brand new engine in it. So I don't like motorcycles, and I don't like my husband riding them, but he really likes them, and so we agreed like that. Obviously, that made a lot more sense than ever going and purchasing our own. So we purchased that from him with the intention of paying it back with the tax returns we would get at the beginning of 2022. So we were not making payments on that at that time. So at the height of 2021, we owed $108,500. All right, so going into 2022, all these things continue to be paid off the Suburban. Oh, okay. I'm still owing $27,000 on the student loans, not making payments. So in the spring of 2022, for the most part, our farm income goes back to sustaining the farm. Because of the situation that we're in with the 3 kids and just our goal and what we wanted to do. I took what was left of 2021 farm profits and paid off the contract that I owed to my mom. For a variety of reasons, it was a lower interest loan, so nobody said it made sense to do it. But there were a lot of things when you buy something contract for deed, like it's yours and you own it, but like anytime we did anything with our farm operating stuff, like they needed my mom's signature because technically she still owned the deed to the house, and so it was a lien on her property, and so it was just frustrating for everybody involved. So we paid that off in the spring of 2022, still owing $41,000 on the HELOC. The camper we were able to pay off with taxes in spring of 2022. That personal loan is still paid off, and we're also paid off the motorcycle with taxes along with the camper that year. So we were feeling pretty good. No vehicle, I'm like, yes, great. And then my husband's truck, we knew it was on its last leg. Like, he knew, we knew, and I was at the point where I was like, just let me know when it dies and we'll figure it out then. Like, I'm just trying to survive and figure out this life with 3 little kids. And so in November of 2022, I was sitting at my kitchen table, and he's across the road in the field, and the truck is stopped. And I kind of assumed he was just out looking at something, but as I'm seeing other things transpire, I realized that the truck has died. He like called my brother came to get him from the farm. They like towing it back. It died. It actually died on the blacktop, and he like coasted into the field driveway so that he wouldn't end up stranded on the side of our blacktop, which has like this wide of shoulders. So after lots of conversation, there were 3 things that he thought might be wrong with it. He thought it was probably the biggest option C, but there were a couple cheaper, smaller fixed options that he could try first. He's a mechanic by trade, as I have said. He said, if it's not option A, I can try option B. If it's not option B, that means that it is option C that's wrong with it. And I'm not doing that. I'm not fixing that in this truck, which I have respect for his boundaries as a professional, so that's fine. He threw parts A and B at it. That did not fix it. Determined that it was likely option C, and he said, I'm not fixing that. So we had a conversation. Like, I certainly could have taken it to a mechanic and done whatever, but that would have been, $5,000 or $6,000 to pay someone else to do it on a 20-year-old truck. And we just decided that was the point at which we cut our losses. We were able to sell it for a few $1,000s to somebody else who was able to see like that's likely what was wrong with them. They like working on that kind of vehicle, and they could turn it around and make a profit. So we needed a truck for the farm and for the snowplow. So we went and we financed a pickup. We were able to put a good chunk down from the farm, since it is a farm purchase. We went and financed a pretty new truck, and we were still left financing $25,000 after our down payment. So, which was a bummer, but I think we knew it was coming. So that still puts us at $93,000 at the end of 22. All right, and then coming into 2023, so we are still on student loans. We still have $27,000 on my student loans. Again, still not making payments. So again, just a little bit of further information. So I mentioned that I was in the public service student loan forgiveness program, a $0 payment at this time. I will continue to recertify it whenever it is required and pay the minimum payments. So the first $10,000, which is what I still owe on my associate's degree, that will hit the 10 years of repayment, the 120 payments. That will happen in January of 24. And then the other, about $17,000, I think I have it calculated for, maybe it's only 16 months. It's like July, August, somewhere of that, late summer, early fall of 25. So just about 2 years left on the other 17,000. So, I don't know what's going to happen with that program, and I don't know what the process is like once you hit your time. So our HELOC currently is at about 40,000. I have said that continues to be what we utilize for house projects. And so some people are like, you don't finance that, or you should only do it in cash and whatever. And so part of where I'm at on this journey is like, and what I wanted to share, like, I don't believe that all debt is bad. And I don't love debt, but I'm also not trying to be, entirely debt free. Like, I'm not in a hurry to pay off our HELOC. We did put a big chunk on it when we sold our camper after we paid it off, but then we did more things. And this summer we're laying a concrete patio. So this house that I bought from my parents, my grandparents built it in 1979, so it's not that old, but it is worth noting that when I moved in, everything was original to 1979. So there's just updates that have been necessary over the years, and it's done little by little, and that is how we've done it, is by using our home equity line of credit with the equity in our home. And that's probably how we'll continue to do it. It has a max right now of $50,000. So the maximum amount I would pay monthly is $500, and I will probably continue to utilize that until I don't even know. I haven't even considered what happens when that's done. But we are going to do a patio this summer. You know, I want to finish my basement. I would love a master bathroom. We completely redid our kitchen, new floors, cabinets, countertops, faucets, a whole new like bathroom, not a tub, but just like all new cabinets and flooring and stuff. Because after 45 years, things need updated. So that is what we utilize to update our home. And then so our truck, I put all of our federal tax return, all of our state tax return, and I just put another chunk on it yesterday. So this is after our payment yesterday. Well, no, it's Sunday. It was 2 days ago. But if you watched my budget video, I put a big chunk on it. It is a farm truck. There's just not that much money in the farm right now, if you know like about farming. So we're trying to sell the last of our grain from last year, and that's what we utilized to put this chunk on here. He did take another load in the other day. I'm not sure if that'll pay it off or not, but otherwise, like the farm, like we still have to get through this growing season, and then we're living on an operating note for that. So this is what's left on our truck. This is what's left on our HELOC currently, and this is what is left on my student loans. So that leaves $69,005. And like, it's just, to me, like that still sounds like a lot of debt. Mind you, that is our, you know, technically our mortgage and student loans. But I'm feeling like that is super accomplished, and I'm going to be super excited when we're, you know, get the truck paid off, so that I feel like I have that monthly payment freed up, because then I can really focus on sinking funds and saving. So on this journey, you know, I'm not saying that next time he needs a vehicle that we won't finance it. I would love to be able to save a good down payment so we're not paying a giant payment, but like, I'm not entirely saying, you know, I want to be 100% debt free, because I just don't think that that's probably where I'm going to be. But I was really on a journey to try to get rid of all these extra payments and to get rid of some of that stuff that was just taking my money at the end of the month. And so I just wanted to share that journey that we've been on. It's also worth noting that when I'm looking at my debt, I'm looking at our personal debt. I have said that we do farm. So when I'm looking at this, like long term, if something happened to my husband tomorrow and I couldn't farm without him, I wouldn't have to use my bi-weekly income to pay off that farm debt. Like, it's all backed by itself, and it sustains itself. And if I had to quit doing it, it could pay itself off. If that makes sense. So that is kind of our journey and where we've been. I apologize, because I feel like there were probably things that I missed, and this might be confusing, because it's so, like, there's a bunch of stuff that we paid off with tax returns, but the amount, you know, the amount that we had on it, well, $12,000, when it was time to pay it off, I didn't know $12,000 on it, because I had been paying on it from October to whenever we got taxes. So it sometimes looks like I paid off more with taxes than I did, but this was just kind of my best way to get sort of an estimate of, like, in that year, probably maybe at the beginning of the year we owed that, and then, you know, the next, just kind of guesses and estimates of where we've gone on our journey to less debt. Again, not necessarily debt-free, but less debt. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them, happy to talk about things. If I missed something, if something didn't make sense, let me know. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I would love if you would subscribe and come along with me on this journey. And until next time, friends, have a great day.